Hello, friends. You will see how a simple mirror becomes a gatekeeper of a woman's boundaries. The subject is Nova, and the mirror above the sink in a quiet apartment, where two breaths of her face are captured in glass. Behind the still surface lurks the old chorus, fear of abandonment, fear of worth, that makes self-sacrifice feel sacred and necessary. When a choice to demand space arrives, the room tightens and the past reasserts itself. Watch closely. Nova stands in the glow of the hallway light, a soft halo around her like a half-open door. The mirror above the sink holds her face in two breaths, the woman who knows how to disappear and the woman who wants to be seen. Tonight the image feels sharper, almost listening. The apartment is quiet, but the weight of the old pattern hums through the walls. A need to please, a risk to own a need. Conflict threads through her chest. Every time she considers asking for space, for a boundary, the old chorus rises. You'll be abandoned. You'll be useless. You will be judged for wanting more than you give. The price of self-sacrifice has an aftertaste of shame, and Nova tastes it now as a sour, familiar sting. The dominant thought clamps down. A choice must be made, even if the choice feels small, even if fear tries to pretend it isn't real. The mirror becomes a witness, not a judge. It reflects the scene with a patient calm, the ex-partner's silhouette hovering at the edge of memory. Not in the room, but in the glass. A ghost Barbara of old demands. Nova's hands drift to the edge of the sink, and she notices the tremor she used to mistake for resolve. She tilts her head, studies the line of her own mouth, and whispers to the trembling thing inside. This is a moment to speak for yourself, not against another. The price of self-sacrifice surfaces in crisp relief. The moment she imagines sending a boundary text, the moment she imagines the door closing on intrusion. Then a breath, soft, deliberate, and the core move arrives, quiet and stubborn as daylight. Her dominant choice crystallizes. I will name my needs, and I will risk a little distance to protect them. The critic inside loosens its grip, not fled, but seated, listening. She doesn't shout, she speaks with clarity, as if teaching the shy parts of herself to stand tall. The tension holds, internal fear and external pushback. Yet the scene narrows to one exact gesture, a simple, careful boundary statement. Not a slam, but a boundary-fitted thread. She fingers the phone, hesitates, and texts a sentence that feels almost foreign in her mouth. I need space to take care of myself today. The ex-partner's echo arrives as a ping, and for a moment the old reaction, the reflex to erase her own need, lingers. But the mirror catches it, holds it, then releases it into air she can breathe. Will I permit my own needs without fear of rejection? The air asks, and Nova, still a little unsteady, still learning to cradle longing without shaming it, answers with a small, steady breath. The door to self-compassion glides just a fraction wider. The warm light flickers, not away from pain, but toward the possibility of being whole and kind at once. The mirror nods, an unspoken witness to a choice that might begin the quiet, stubborn work of healing. The clinic room settles into softness. A warm lamp, a glass of water, and Dr. Maya Chen, seated opposite Nova, hands open and inviting on the table like a pair of quiet palms offering a pause. Nova sits with ribs a little too visible, shoulders drawn in as if to shrink from her own gaze. The air tastes of rain and coffee, of the careful listening that follows in rooms like this. Self-compassion, Dr. Chen says, steady as a shoreline, is not a soft retreat from reality. It's a practical stance. Kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. The kind that can be practiced, not merely felt. She moves her hands as if counting beads. We start with a small, doable practice. A moment to speak to yourself as you would to someone you love. Her voice is calm, non-judging, a tool in itself. Nova's breath hiccups. The memory of the ex flickers behind her lids. The way care became control, the way saying no felt fatal. Skepticism sharpens her edges. This sounds gentle, almost indulgent. Yet curiosity threads through the threadbare doubt. A thin, new line she's afraid to trust. Dr. Chen shifts forward, and the room narrows to the simple act she demonstrates. One hand over the heart, the other resting in open, welcoming palms. Open hands, as if the body itself were offering mercy. Softly breathe in, she says, and out. Now, say to yourself, may I be kind to myself, just for this minute. The phrase lands on Nova's tongue like a cautious breath she dares to take. Her eyes squeeze shut for a heartbeat, then open, slower, as if testing the air for mercy. The skeptic within still rumbles, but curiosity nudges it aside. Nova repeats the line, a whisper that trembles yet persists. The hands on the table mirror the inner posture she longs to inhabit. Open, not clenched. Present, not defiant. Not perfection, Dr. Chen adds. Just a concrete practice you can unsheath when the old pattern calls. The word practice lands softly, and Nova feels the room widen a fraction, as if support has finally arrived in a form she can reach. The moment feels like a hinge, not a miracle, but a choice. Nova's breath settles, and with it, a small, stubborn belief that her needs might not be a threat after all. Yet the question remains, suspended in the air like a breath held too long. Can Nova permit her needs and trust the support, beginning the practice of compassion? The doorframe catches a sliver of hallway light as the ex-partner steps into the room, a silhouette with familiar gravity. Nova stands in the center of the soft glow, shoulders squared, the air between them tight as a held breath. The memory of every whispered demand brushes her cheek. How need was weaponized as affection, how the word no turned to a punishment. We used to talk in here, he says, voice easy, as if she's the one who's moved away. Let's talk now. Her heart drums, a warning light she's trained herself not to ignore. Fear crawls along her spine, but something smaller and steadier threads through it. Self-compassion, stubborn and close to the bone, reminding her she's not asking for safety. She's claiming it. I'm not discussing what you want to control, she answers, steadier than she feels. I'm setting a boundary. If you can't respect it, you can't stay in this space. He laughs once, a soft ripple that doesn't reach his eyes. This is dramatic. You're making a scene. Nova doesn't flinch. She steps a pace closer to the center of the room, where the space feels like a safe harbor. She raises her hands, palms open, not as surrender, but as an offering. Open hands, a clear symbol of care that begins with herself. The gesture lands like a soft bell in the quiet, not punishment, but invitation to respect her limits. I'm asking you to leave the room, she says gently, but with a gravity that shakes a decade of quietly tolerated demands. If you can't do that, I'll close the door and you'll have until tomorrow to reach out, with a message and with respect. The ex-partner's breath catches. The edge of control trembles. He circles his words, testing them. Cheap apologies, reframed grievances, the old pattern slipping loose. Across the room, a door frame becomes a line she will not cross. Then the door knocks. Not force, but promise. Jordan steps in, calm and deliberate, a listening presence already at work. He shows her the shoulder turn of support, an unspoken pledge to witness without judgment. He doesn't crowd, he doesn't pry, He listens, and the room seems to exhale. Nova looks at him, at the space she's carved, at the boundary that finally feels possible. The fear still hums, but it's smaller now, muffled by a deeper kindness. Her hands stay open, a symbol that now includes the others who will hold her up, not to fix her, but to stand with her. "Thank you," she whispers, not to Jordan alone, but to the future she's choosing. A boundary that is care, a choice that is not a shield against love, but a doorway into safer connection. The ex-partner retreats into the hallway's shadow, the dim light catching on a shoulder as he disappears. The room settles into a cautious quiet. The dominant act, Nova choosing her boundary, has happened. The question hangs in the air. Will she hold it when the old pattern circles back, when fear says retreat? For now, the answer is a breath, a soft nod, and the open hands, still offering, still strong enough to say, "I am here, and I am safe." The room has the warmth of an orbiting lamp, a soft glow that makes skin look kinder than it feels. Nova steps in and pauses at the circle. The low hum of chairs, the quiet rustle of a scarf, a candle breathing in the back corner. On the coffee table sits a sculpture. Two hands, open, cupped as if ready to catch a fragment of light or a spoken truth. The symbol is not announced. It simply sits there, ordinary and exact, like a door left ajar. Jordan sits closest to the door, a steady anchor, shoulders relaxed and open. Dr. Maya Chen is there too, not in the chair of authority, but in a corner seat with a notebook that looks more like a map than a rule book. A few others rotate into the circle. A woman who smiles with her eyes, a man who speaks softly, a younger member who clutches a mug as if it were a lifeline. The air feels allowed here, as if the room itself is learning to breathe. "Welcome," says the facilitator, a gesture toward the sculpture. "Open hands?" A small, almost shy smile crosses Nova's face at the reminder. The phrase used to sting, needing help felt like surrender. Tonight, it feels different. Tonight, she is here to listen, and maybe to test a boundary without tearing the room apart. Conflict hums beneath the conversation, like a low violin string. Nova's fear of dependence is not gone. It is just quieter, tucked behind the embarrassment of needing support and the worry that accepting care will erase her autonomy. The fear presses at her ribs, a measured drumbeat. If I let them in, will I lose myself? If I am seen, will I still choose what I want? A woman speaks of a small victory, opening the phone bill with a breath instead of a scream, asking a friend for a ride, saying no to a demand she would have previously met with a torrent of apologies. The honesty lands in the circle like a stone dropped into water. Each ripple widening the space Nova notices between herself and that old self who believed self-sacrifice was safety. Dr. Chen leans forward, her voice calm, practical. "Self-compassion is a muscle you can train," she says, not as a sermon, but as a set of tools. Notice the urge to shrink, name what you need, and invite support that respects your boundary. Her words land in Nova's chest, not as a map of a cure, but as a doorway. Jordan speaks next, not loud, but sure. "You don't owe anyone your silence, Nova. You owe yourself honesty about what you can handle and what you deserve." He doesn't push. He offers a chair to the next person who needs it, an open palm toward the empty seat as if to say, "You're not alone in this room." Nova feels the loneliness loosen, a thread slipping from a knot she wore too long. The first time she speaks, the words catch and then loosen. "A boundary I'm trying. A request I'd like you to honor. A need I am learning to name without shame." The room doesn't rush to judgment. It nods. It listens. It reflects back with quiet questions and gentle encouragement. The symbol appears again, organically. One of the group members passes a cup of tea that glows gold in the lamplight, and Nova notices how the other hands steady the cup, how the open hand sculpture seems to mirror their approach, invite, cradle, never pin down. She feels it in her own hands too, the way her fingers loosen around the mug, the way her breath steadies as she finishes her sentence with a simple, "I'd like to try saying no and see what happens." The dominant impulse in the room is not to fix her, but to witness her choosing. The scene moves toward a shared belief. Support is not a leash, but a scaffold. Yet the air remains pierced with a question, pushed to the edge of spoken word. What if accepting help changes the shape of her life without erasing who she is? When the circle dissolves into lighter chatter, plans for a next meeting, a practical task, a reminder to breathe. The last glance Nova catches is toward the sculpture, toward the open hands that didn't demand anything, that offered space instead. She feels a gradual shift, a sense that belonging can grow without surrendering autonomy. As she steps toward the door, the room steadies behind her. The conflict is not resolved, but the tension has shifted. From fear of loss to curiosity about how much she can accept and still remain herself. The question lingers, unspoken in the yellow glow. Can Nova trust this outside care and keep her own compass clear? Nova sits at the kitchen table, diary open, the page catching the lamplight like a pale coastline. The pen hovers, then lands. The room is quiet except for the fridge's soft hum and the city's distant thump. The old pattern, self-denial, always checking others' needs, the fear of being unwanted if she asks for anything, presses in from the walls. The critic inside her speaks in clipped rhythm. You're not worth asking for what you need. You'll burden people. You'll be left alone. She breathes, counting. Dr. Chen's voice drifts in as a weathered map. Pause, name the need. Offer yourself the kindness you'd offer a friend. The words feel soft at first, a woolen scarf against winter skin. Then a butterfly arrives, lands on the diary's corner, wings catching the lamp. Its movement steadies her, this tiny creature, a sign of change, of slow emergence. The conflict returns, but now it fractures. The inner critic whispers and then falters. The dominant choice follows. I will pause with my own pain. I will acknowledge my need. I will practice self-kindness, even when it risks the old pull toward self-sacrifice. She writes, "Today, I practice care for myself, so I can stay present for others without vanishing." The diary becomes a small ceremony, a private boundary, a soft repatterning. The butterfly lifts, then remains, as if listening. She writes a closing line, not a decree, but a question shaped into a vow. If I tend to my own worth, will the circle of care around me hold? Or will the old fear pull me back? The lamp flickers once. The page waits. The answer, for now, is still suspended in the air. Will she choose compassion for herself? And with it, a gentler, truer way to love others? Nova sits at the edge of the sofa in the quiet therapy room. Sunlight narrowing along the edge of the table like a pale blade. Her notebook rests on her knee, a butterfly sticker catching a speck of light and fluttering, almost real, in the corner of her eye. The old pattern hums behind the walls, the ex-partner's voice rehearsed as a command, the fear that if she speaks up, she'll be broken again. A breath seizes in her chest. The memory arrives with the precision of a door slamming. Control, the door bolted, her own mouth kept shut. Her shoulders shoved forward as if to protect a vulnerable interior that's learned to disappear. The room tilts. The butterfly on the page seems to tremble with the tremor in her hands. Then, Dr. Maya Chen's calm voice cuts through the echo. Nova, what you're feeling isn't a betrayal of you. It's your brain doing its old job. Chen says, soft but clear. When threat signals are triggered, the limbic system lights up. That doesn't mean you're backsliding. It means you're learning to rewire. We call that a self-compassion pause. Label, soften, choose. Nova swallows the fear rather than swallowing it whole. She whispers to herself, barely audible, that old pattern is not truth. I am here now. Her gaze drifts to the butterfly on the notebook, a fragile map of change. The room holds, and Jordan slides into the chair next to her, not with intrusion, but with a steady, open-handed presence. The symbol of care, without coercion. Start with your breath, Jordan says, hands palm up, a small, practiced ritual. Nova follows, each exhale loosening the knot in her throat, each inhale gathering enough space to hear her own needs again. The fear still aches, but it sits beside a gentler sound, the soft, turning tide of care toward herself. The flashback presses again, not violently, but as a pressure behind her eyes. She feels it rise, a surge of old vigilance, and then a deliberate pause. I need space to think, she says, not to the memory, but to the room, to Chen, to Jordan, to the part of her that wants to pretend nothing is wrong. She looks at the butterfly sticker again and speaks aloud the boundaries she has not allowed herself to name before. X, I hear you, and I'm choosing safety. I won't negotiate my space or my voice. Her own voice sounds smaller than she wants, but it is hers. Chen nods, a gentle frame around the moment. That choice, to protect your safety while inviting care, is your neurocognitive shift in action. The fear still exists. The skill is in letting compassion lead. Nova feels the old tension loosen. The butterfly on the page steadies, becomes not a symbol of flight from danger, but of a small, deliberate transformation. Delicate, persistent, stubborn against despair. The room seems warmer, the light a little more forgiving. The dominant turn is clear. A choice to anchor herself in self-respect while remaining open to help. The tension remains, both fear and compassion leaning toward the same outcome, neither fully victorious nor defeated. Jordan's presence is a durable hinge, the support network quietly strengthening her center. And as the scene closes, the question lingers in the air, not as a trap, but as a doorway left ajar. Can Nova welcome care without surrendering her autonomy? Can she choose self-kindness and still stand firmly on her own ground? The butterfly keeps its quiet promise on the page, and the answer, for now, hovers just out of reach. The clinic room glowed with the pale hush of morning. The city's murmur softened behind the glass. Nova sits across from Dr. Maya Chen, a notebook open between them. A small butterfly doodle rides the page's edge as if it hovered from Nova's own thoughts. Her hands tremble, then settle. Dr. Chen watches, not hurried, just present. Boundaries aren't punishments, she says softly. They're care you offer to yourself and to others, in pursuit of something healthier. Nova's breath catches. External pressure presses in from the walls, the memory of the ex-partner's insistence, of friends who equate self-care with selfishness. Internal pressure answers with a chorus of old rehearsals. You're unworthy unless you sacrifice a part of yourself to keep things safe. The butterfly on the page seems to flutter, almost mocking the fear. I'm terrified, Nova admits, voice steadier than she feels. If I say no to what he wants, will I be abandoned? If I demand space for my own needs, will I disappear? Dr. Chen nods, not to agree with the fear, but to acknowledge it. Fear is honest. The choice you face isn't to abandon others. It's to align your actions with something you deserve. Autonomy that can still hold care for others. Nova flips to a blank page, writes a single line. Boundaries, care. She hesitates, then meets Chen's eyes. Okay. Then I want to try a boundary I've never tried aloud. I will not engage when my needs are dismissed or weaponized against me. I will pause, I will describe what I need, and I will seek supportive reassurance if I'm uncertain. The room deepest in sound seems to exhale. Chen's smile is patient. Nice start. Say it aloud as a sentence you can repeat to yourself in a tense moment. Nova takes a breath and speaks, not as a defense, but as a promise. I need safety to be part of my love, not its price. I deserve support for my boundaries, and I will test them with care, not punishment. The butterfly on the page shifts, as if its wings replied in a whisper of agreement. Nova notices it. The symbol lands in her chest like a small, hopeful breath. Good, Chen says. Now imagine the other person's response as a reflection of their own needs and limits, not a measure of your worth. How would you respond from a place of self-compassion while staying connected where it's safe? Nova feels the old critic soften, the way a thread loosens after a cautious tug. I would name my need, invite a two-way conversation, and accept that not every demand will be met. And that's okay, as long as I'm cared for. You're practicing a new language, Chen agrees, and you're not alone in it. Let the group witnesses be the wind at your back, not the storm around you. The door's distant chime reminds them of the world beyond the softly lit room, a world that still tests the edges of courage. Nova glances at the butterfly again, a tiny beacon of what could be. Flight, restraint, and the fragile strength to keep moving. Tell me again, Chen adds, what you're choosing right now. Nova's voice finds its stead. I'm choosing self-compassion and the support that honors it. I'm choosing a love that doesn't require me to lose myself. Outside, the morning light grows certain, the butterfly's silhouette faint but hopeful on the page. The question lingers, unspoken yet undeniable. Can this new way hold when old gravity still pulls? Morning light slides along the kitchen counter, painting Nova's mugs in soft apricot. She sets her phone to Do Not Disturb, taps the diary open, and writes the day's first question. What would self-kindness look like in this minute? The page is dotted with a small butterfly, sketched in careful spirals, a quiet hinge toward change. The routine begins with breath. Inhale 2, exhale 3. She places a palm over her sternum as the neuroframe Dr. Chen taught her whispers in her ear. Name the feeling, then pivot toward a gentler reply. Fear loosens its hold just enough to let curiosity slip in. Then the boundary list. I will not chase his needs before mine. I will pause before responding. I will sleep before solving the world's problems for others. The conflict arrives as a soft static in her bones. The old critic wakes with a rasping hiss. You're taking too long. You'll fail at this. People will abandon you if you claim your own space. It wants the door open, wants the old pattern to resume its weighty labor. Nova feels the tug, an ache for the familiar comfort of self-sacrifice, while a newer impulse steadies her hands. Stay with the boundary. Stay with the breath. In the doorway, the butterfly on the page seems to flutter its tiny wings as if to say, courage is a practice, not a feeling. She speaks aloud, almost surprised by the sound. I am allowed to protect what is mine. The phrase lands and settles, soft and stubborn, like a person you trust stepping in to stand with you. The doorbell rings, a memory dressed as a silhouette in the hallway. Not him, not the old script, but the echo of it. The echo she used to fear would drown her. Jordan's voice slides through the apartment from the next room. "You've got this, Nova." The ring fades, and for the first time, the room holds more support than pressure. The butterfly remains, a small emblem of transformation, perched on the corner of the page, as if to remind her that change can stay, even when fear wants to rewrite the morning. The routine continues. A 3-minute self-compassion pause, a note to herself, a plan to text Dr. Chen later. Boundaries feel less like punishment and more like shelter, a legitimate space where care and connection can cohabit. The question lingers, suspended above the steam of coffee. Can she keep this discipline alive when the familiar tremor returns, when the old pattern skulks behind the door, waiting? The butterfly watches, unhurried, and Nova chooses the next breath anyway. Morning light slides along the kitchen counter as Nova stands with the diary open and a butterfly sketch catching the sun. The old pattern hums in her chest. Fear wearing a coat of care, need disguised as sacrifice. And she knows today she must draw a line she will not redraw. The doorbell rings, and the ex-partner materializes in the doorway, a silhouette pressing forward with the old gravity. Nova meets him, feet rooted, hands open. "No more talks that circle back to control," she says, steady as a hinge. "You want contact? It goes through my support team now. If you cross it again, we go separate ways safely." He flares, testing a familiar line, but her breath stays slow, her voice unshaken. The open palms become an emblem, care for herself, not concession to him. Jordan's voice comes through the phone on the table, calm and present. "You've got this, Nova." A moment later, the butterfly on the diary seems to flutter in the light, a sign that change is possible. Nova names the fears aloud: abandonment, loss, the old hush that followed every need, and then names what she will do. Breathe, pause, reach for the group, protect her time, state her needs, and let no one erase them. The ex-partner hesitates, glances at the unopened letter on the counter, then backs toward the doorway. The door closes softly, and the apartment exhales. Nova's shoulders loosen, the room warms. The soft blanket of support settles around her. The butterfly remains, a hinge of transformation, but the future remains painted with questions. Can this boundary hold forever, or will the next pressure test demand another hinge toward safety? Morning light slides along the kitchen counter, soft as a whisper. Nova sits with the diary open, coffee cooling beside a page already inked with a small, patient butterfly. The world outside is busy, but inside the room slows to a careful, almost sacred pace. She presses her palms to the cool wood, takes a breath that trembles, and writes the first line of the day. What would self-kindness look like in this minute? Her inner critic drifts in like a draft. "You're pretending. You're soft. You'll be eaten alive if you let joy in." The voice is threadbare, familiar, a pattern worn thin by repetition. She names it instead of fighting it. Fear dressed as vigilance. Then she speaks to the other part in herself, the part that has learned to survive by smoothing every edge for others. Dr. Chen's neuro frame floats up from memory, simple and precise. Name the feeling, pivot toward a kinder reply, anchor in the body. She breathes again, slower this time, and the room seems to lean closer. A butterfly lands, almost as if summoned, settling on the diary's edge. Its wings catch the sun and scatter light in a dozen tiny, grateful suns. The moment feels comic and sacred at once, a living hinge between maybe and yes. The old pattern hums at the walls, the echo of the ex-partner's voice, a memory that always tries to slip past the boundaries she's only just beginning to set. She feels the shimmer of risk, the familiar tug to recoil, to collapse the day back into safe sameness. But the butterfly remains, a bright lemma of possibility. She types a text to Jordan, then deletes it and speaks aloud instead. If contact happens, it happens through my support team. If you push, we pause, and you unmake the connection. The words feel strange and true on her tongue, like a door clicked shut from the inside. The fear answers with a sharper sting, a knot in her throat. But she does not swallow it whole. Instead, she gives it a gentler job. Recognize, acknowledge, and respond as a boundary, not a punishment. The dominant choice unfolds in slow motion. She chooses to stay with the day's small, trustworthy rituals. The breath at the sternum, the soft count of 5. The diary's butterfly lifting just a fraction higher with each deliberate exhale. The ex-partner's silhouette, a distant memory of control, brushes the window, a reminder that old gravity still pulls. Yet the gravity is weaker now. Friction turned toward care. The butterfly lifts again, a delicate circle of light, and Nova feels the internal critic soften its edge, its earlier thunder muffling into a respectful hum. This is a scene of choosing, not conquering. She watches as the room steadies around her, the mug in her hand, the chair's quiet support, the steady ping of a message from the support group. Signs that she is not alone in this experiment of being kind to herself. The guiding voice in her mind returns, softer and clearer, naming the feeling that first rose: curiosity.